The silver ships came down from the sky like falling stars, but they brought no wishes. They brought the end of everything Kim Day had ever known. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Dominion conquered Earth. 3 months since humanity's armies fell silent and their flags came down. 3 months since the aliens had taken control of every city, every town, every corner of the world. Kim Day stood in the ruins of what used to be downtown Seoul, watching alien soldiers march past in perfect formation. Their bodies looked like metal and glass mixed together, tall and thin with faces that showed no emotion. They moved like machines, every step exactly the same as the one before it. The aliens called themselves the Dominion. They ruled 40,000 star systems across the galaxy. Earth was just another number to add to their list. Commander Vextar walked through the streets with his aide, Sub-Commander Kylos. Both aliens wore the dark blue uniforms of the Dominion Cultural Assessment Division. Their job was simple: find anything useful in human civilization and catalog it for the Empire. They had been on Earth for weeks now, going through human knowledge like shoppers looking through old clothes. Mathematics, engineering, chemistry, biology. They took what they wanted and threw away the rest. Most of human science was primitive to them. Most of human technology was crude. But they kept looking, hoping to find something worth their time. Kim Day followed them from a safe distance, trying to stay hidden behind broken concrete and twisted metal. He had been a music teacher before the invasion. Now he was just another survivor, trying to understand the aliens who had destroyed his world. The 2 aliens stopped in front of an old man sitting on a pile of rubble. The man held a violin, its wood scratched and dirty but still whole. His fingers moved across the strings, playing a soft melody that drifted through the ruined street. Commander Vextar tilted his head and listened for a moment. Then he began to laugh. The sound was sharp and cold like breaking glass. "What is this creature doing?" he asked his aide in their strange language. The alien's words sounded like metal scraping against stone. "It appears to be making random noise with a primitive tool," Sub-Commander Kylos replied. He pulled out a small device and pointed it at the violin player. "The sounds have no mathematical pattern, no logical purpose. It seems to be a waste of neural energy." The old man kept playing, unaware that the aliens were talking about him. His music was beautiful and sad, filled with all the pain of losing everything he loved. But to the aliens, it was just noise. More Dominion soldiers gathered around, drawn by their commander's laughter. They pointed at the violin and made sounds that must have been jokes in their language. Some of them covered their ears as if the music hurt them. Kim Day felt his hands shake with anger. The old man was playing arirang, one of Korea's most beautiful traditional songs. It was a piece that had been loved for hundreds of years, passed down from parent to child like a precious gift. And these aliens were laughing at it. Commander Vexitar walked closer to the old man and knocked the violin from his hands. It fell to the ground with a crash, its strings snapping like tiny screams. "No more noise," the alien said in broken human language. "Music is mental contamination. Art is waste of brain power." The old man looked up with tears in his eyes, but he said nothing. What could he say? The aliens had all the power now. Across the city, Park Sol watched from her apartment. Window as alien soldiers burned a pile of musical instruments in the street below. Violins, guitars, drums, flutes, all of them thrown into the fire like garbage. The smoke rose into the gray sky, carrying away centuries of human creativity. Park Sol had been the conductor of the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra before the invasion. She had led some of the world's most talented musicians in performances that moved audiences to tears. Now those musicians were scattered, their instruments destroyed, their music banned. The aliens had made their position very clear. Art was useless. Music was harmful. Humans who insisted on making random noise would be punished. In another part of the city, Li Wu sat in his small apartment, staring at sheets of music he had written. He was a composer, or at least he had been. Now composition was illegal. The alien said music confused the brain and made people weak. Li Wu had spent his whole life creating beautiful sounds, finding new ways to combine melodies and rhythms. His compositions had been played in concert halls around the world. But, according to the Dominion, his life's work was nothing more than primitive sound pollution. Choi Na hid in an underground subway tunnel with her traditional Korean drums. She had been part of a Samul Nori group, playing the ancient rhythms that connected modern Korea to its past. The drums were all she had left of her old life, and she would die before she let the aliens take them away. She thought about the Dominion's official announcement, broadcast on every screen in the city. Human artistic expression represents the lowest form of cultural development we have encountered. Their music lacks mathematical precision. Their art serves no logical purpose. These creatures waste precious neural capacity on meaningless emotional discharge. The words hurt more than any weapon could. To hear everything she loved called worthless, meaningless, primitive, it was almost too much to bear. 2 weeks later, the burnings began in earnest. Alien soldiers went from building to building, collecting every musical instrument, every painting, every book of poetry they could find. Trucks carried the treasures of human creativity to massive bonfires outside each city. Kim Dae stood with thousands of other humans, forced to watch as their culture burned. He saw his old piano from the music school disappear into the flames. He saw paintings by masters he had studied in university turn to ash and smoke. He saw books of songs that children had sung for generations feed the alien fires. Commander Vextar stood on a platform above the crowd, speaking through a translator device. "Citizens of Earth," the machine said in a flat, emotionless voice, "your former government wasted precious resources on meaningless activities. Music, painting, sculpture, poetry. These are symptoms of an undeveloped mind. The Dominion will help you move beyond such primitive thinking. From today forward, all artistic expression is banned. Any human found creating, performing, or possessing art will be relocated to a correction facility. You will learn to use your brains for logical thinking only. You will become productive members of the galaxy." The crowd stood in silence, afraid to speak or move. But inside, Kim Dae felt something burning brighter than any fire. It was not fear or sadness. It was anger. The aliens thought they could steal humanity's soul and call it progress. They thought they could burn beauty and call it logic. They were wrong. Kim Dae did not know it yet, but in a few months, he would help prove just how wrong they were. The music they called worthless would become the weapon that brought their empire to its knees. But for now, he could only watch the smoke rise and make a silent promise. Somehow, someday, the music would return. And when it did, the aliens would learn what human art could really do. 6 months had passed since the great burning of human art. The aliens thought they had won completely. They thought all music was gone forever. They were wrong. Deep in the mountains outside Seoul, Kim Dae sat in a hidden cave with 12 other people. They had been meeting in secret for weeks, sharing the one thing the aliens feared most: music. "Play it softly," whispered Park Sol, the former orchestra conductor. "We cannot let them hear us." Li Wu lifted a small wooden flute to his lips. He had carved it himself from a piece of bamboo, working only at night when the alien patrols had passed. The melody that came out was gentle and sweet, like water flowing over stones. The others listened with tears in their eyes. It had been so long since any of them had heard real music. So long since they had felt the joy that only beautiful sounds could bring. But they were not the only ones hiding music from the aliens. In the capital city of the Dominion, millions of light years away, Fleet Admiral Zexmorth sat in his command center reading reports that made no sense. "Explain this to me again," he said to his aide, pointing at the data on his screen. 3 ships have crashed in the past month, all in different systems, all for no reason." "Yes, Admiral," the aide replied. The crews reported feeling strange. Before the crashes, dizzy, confused, unable to concentrate. Some even said they felt emotional. Admiral Zexmorth's metal face showed disgust. Emotion was a weakness that the Dominion had bred out of their species long ago. No proper Dominion citizen should ever feel such things. Were they sick? Poisoned? No, sir. Medical scans showed nothing wrong with them. But there is one strange thing. All 3 crashes happened near human settlements, the Admiral thought about this. The humans had been completely defeated. Their weapons were destroyed, their armies scattered, their leaders dead or imprisoned. What could a bunch of primitive creatures do to damage Dominion ships? Send Dr. Velcani to investigate, he ordered. I want to know what is happening. Dr. Velcani was the Dominion's best xenopsychologist, an expert in how different alien species thought and behaved. She had studied hundreds of conquered races, learning their weaknesses and how to control them. A week later, she stood in the ruins of a human city, watching her instruments detect something impossible. The air itself seemed to carry tiny vibrations, patterns that her equipment had never seen before. What is causing these readings? She asked the local commander. We are not sure, Doctor. But whenever they appear, our soldiers become strange. As if summoned by their words, the vibrations grew stronger. Somewhere in the city, hidden from alien eyes, humans were making music. In a basement 3 blocks away, Choi Na sat with her traditional drums, playing the rhythms her grandmother had taught her. The beats were complex, layering over each other, like waves on a shore. To human ears, it was beautiful. But to the Dominion soldiers walking overhead, it was something else entirely. The first soldier stopped walking and put his hand to his head. What is that feeling? He asked his partner. I do not know. My mind feels cloudy. The second soldier tried to take another step but stumbled. His usually perfect balance was gone. His thoughts, normally precise and logical, seemed to spin in circles. Within minutes, both soldiers were sitting on the ground, too confused to stand or call for help. Dr. Velcani's instruments detected their distress and tracked it to its source. But when she arrived at the basement, she found only empty rooms. The humans had heard the aliens coming and escaped through secret tunnels. Still, she had learned something important. Somehow the humans were fighting back with weapons the Dominion had never encountered before. Meanwhile, in the hidden cave, Kim Dae was making his own discoveries. He had been experimenting with different types of music, trying to understand why the aliens hated it so much. Watch this, he told the others, picking up a small device he had built. It was a simple music player, powered by a car battery and hidden inside a wooden box. He pressed a button, and the cave filled with the sound of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. The music was powerful and dramatic, with crashing chords and soaring, melodies that seemed to shake the very air. To the humans, it was glorious, but to the alien patrol that was walking past the cave entrance, it was agony. The first alien soldier screamed and fell to his knees. The second one tried to run but only made it a few steps before collapsing. Both of them writhed on the ground, clutching their heads as if the music was physically hurting them. Kim Dae quickly turned off the player, and the aliens stumbled away, fleeing as fast as they could. Did you see that? Whispered Li Wu. The music actually hurt them. Park Saul leaned forward, her eyes bright with excitement. It is not just that they dislike our music. Their brains cannot process it properly. Over the following weeks, the small group conducted careful experiments. They discovered that different types of music affected the aliens in different ways. Classical music with complex harmonies made the aliens dizzy and confused. Jazz with its unexpected rhythms caused them to lose coordination. Traditional Korean folk songs seemed to trigger something like panic in their metal minds. But the most powerful effect came from the most human thing of all, singing. When Choi Na sang an old lullaby her mother had taught her, the alien patrol outside their hiding place began to shake uncontrollably. When Park Saul added her voice to create harmony, 2 of the aliens actually fainted. Their brains are too rigid, Park Saul explained to the others. They have been bred for pure logic, perfect efficiency, but music requires flexibility, the ability to feel and imagine. Their minds cannot handle it. Dr. Velcani was reaching the same conclusion in her secret laboratory. Her studies showed that human music activated parts of the brain that the Dominion had suppressed in their own species. Centuries ago, when Dominion soldiers heard music, their minds tried to process it but failed, causing confusion, disorientation, and what could only be called emotional responses. Worse yet, the effect seemed to be contagious. Soldiers who were exposed to music began to show signs of emotional contamination. They questioned orders, expressed individual thoughts, even showed concern for their fellow soldiers. All of these things were forbidden in Dominion society. Dr. Velkani faced a terrible choice. She could report her findings to Admiral Zexmorth and help the Dominion develop weapons to fight back against human music, or she could keep the information secret. As she listened to a recording of human children singing, she felt something she had never experienced before. Her chest felt tight. Her eyes began to leak fluid, and her normally steady hands began to shake. She was crying. A Dominion citizen was crying, and in that moment she realized that the humans were not the primitive ones. They were the ones who had discovered something beautiful, something that made life worth living. The Dominion had gained the galaxy but lost their souls. Back in the cave, Kim Day was organizing their small group into something bigger. They sent secret messages to other survivors, using codes hidden in traditional songs. Slowly, carefully, they began to build a network of musicians across the conquered Earth. "We have found our weapon," he told them. "Now we need to learn how to use it." Outside, alien patrols still marched through the ruined cities. But now, when they heard certain sounds drifting on the wind, they walked a little faster, their metal, faces showing something that looked almost like fear. The war was not over. It was just beginning. And this time, humanity would fight with the most powerful weapons they had ever possessed, the music that lived in their hearts. The resistance grew like music itself, spreading from person to person until it filled every corner of the world. Kim Day stood in an abandoned subway station deep beneath Seoul, looking at the faces of 50 musicians who had answered his secret call. They came from all over the city, carrying instruments they had hidden from the aliens. Violins wrapped in old clothes, drums disguised as cooking pots, flutes carved from scrap metal. "We know that our music hurts them," he said to the gathered crowd. "But we need to do more than just make a few soldiers dizzy. We need to fight back." Park Sol stepped forward. In the months since the invasion, she had changed from a refined orchestra conductor into something harder, more dangerous. Her eyes burned with the fire of someone who had lost everything and was ready to take it back. "I have been studying their patrol patterns," she said, unrolling a map on an old table. "They move through the city in groups of 12, always at the same times, always following the same routes. If we position musicians at key locations, we can create zones they cannot enter." Li Wu raised his hand. "What about their equipment? They have those dampening devices now." It was true. After Dr. Velkani's reports, the Dominion had started giving their soldiers sonic dampeners, small machines that blocked certain sound frequencies. But the devices were imperfect. They could reduce the effect of human music but not eliminate it entirely. "We work around them," Kim Day said. "We use frequencies they cannot block. We use rhythms that confuse their machines. We use the one thing they will never understand: human creativity." Choi Na sat in the corner, surrounded by her traditional drums. She had been experimenting for weeks, finding combinations of beats that drove the aliens into panic. The ancient rhythms of Samul Nori, when played at specific volumes and speeds, seemed to short-circuit their logical minds. "Show them," Park Sol said. Choi Na began to play. The drums filled the underground station, with complex overlapping rhythms. They started simple but grew more complicated with every beat, layering into patterns that seemed impossible to follow. Above them, on the street level, an alien patrol was passing by. The soldiers had walked this route hundreds of times before, but now they stopped, their metal faces showing confusion. "What is that sound?" one of them asked. "I cannot identify the source." Another replied, "My dampener is functioning, but I still feel strange." The drum beats continued and the aliens began to sway on their feet. Their perfect formation broke apart as soldiers stumbled into each other. One of them fell to his knees, clutching his head. "Retreat," the patrol leader ordered, but his voice was shaky and uncertain. "Retreat to base immediately." In the subway station, Choi Na smiled as she heard the aliens' boots running away. "That is how we do it," she said. Over the following days, the musicians put their plan into action. They started small, with individual operations designed to test their new weapons. Song Min, a violinist who had survived the burning of the Seoul Arts Center, hid in a building overlooking a Dominion checkpoint. When the aliens settled in for their evening shift, she began to play. The music was Bach, but not as Bach had written it. Song Min had modified the composition, adding microtones and unusual harmonics that made the logical structure just slightly wrong. To human ears, it was hauntingly beautiful. To the aliens, it was mathematical chaos. The checkpoint guards tried to ignore the sound at first, but within minutes they were stumbling around, unable to focus on their duties. Two of them abandoned their posts entirely, fleeing into the night. The checkpoint remained empty for hours, allowing dozens of human resistance fighters to pass through undetected. In another part of the city, Li Wu was testing his newest composition. He called it Liberation Symphony, and he had designed every note to exploit the weaknesses in alien psychology that they had discovered. The piece began with a simple melody played on traditional Korean instruments, the gyeogyum and haegum. But as it progressed, it added layers of sound that grew increasingly complex. Orchestral instruments joined the traditional ones, creating harmonies that seemed to pull the listener in different directions at once. Li Wu had hidden speakers throughout an alien administrative building, and when he played his symphony, the effect was immediate and devastating. Dominion workers poured out of the building, their usual calm replaced by something approaching terror. But their greatest victory came when they rescued a group of human prisoners scheduled for execution. Aliens had captured 15 resistance fighters and planned to execute them as a warning to others. The execution was set to take place in the main square, with hundreds of humans forced to watch. Kim Dae knew they had to act, but a direct assault would be suicide. Instead, he gathered every musician in the city and prepared for their largest operation yet. They positioned themselves in buildings around the square, each group with different instruments and different pieces to play. Park Sol would conduct them all, using hand signals to coordinate their attack. As the alien firing squad took their positions, Park Sol raised her hands. 50 musicians began to play at once. The sound was overwhelming. Traditional Korean music, mixed with classical European compositions, jazz harmonies blended with folk melodies, percussion rhythms layered over string harmonies. It was chaos, but it was beautiful chaos, the kind of organized disorder that only humans could create. The effect on the aliens was immediate and total. The firing squad collapsed before they could fire a single shot. The guards around the square fell to their knees. Even the commander, protected by the most advanced dampening equipment, staggered backward as if physically struck. In the confusion, the human prisoners broke free of their restraints and escaped into the crowd. The rescue was complete, and not a single shot had been fired. But the aliens were learning too. Commander Vextar studied recordings of the attack and began to understand what the humans were doing. "They are using sound as a weapon," he told Admiral Zexmorth over a communication link. "Their music disrupts our neural pathways. We must take stronger measures." The Admiral's response was swift and merciless. "Begin construction of sonic nullification arrays around all human settlements, and prepare the atmospheric purge weapons. If we cannot stop their music, we will stop their ability to make any sound at all." Dr. Velkani heard the orders from her laboratory and felt her newly awakened heart fill with dread. The atmospheric purge weapons could destroy Earth's entire atmosphere, killing every living thing on the planet. She had to make a choice. Her people, the logical and efficient Dominion, or the chaotic and beautiful humans who had taught her to feel. That night, she sent a secret message to the human resistance, using frequencies that only they would recognize. The message was simple, but crucial. "They plan to destroy your world in 7 days. You must act now." Kim Dae received the message while hiding in the ruins of his old music school. He looked at the broken piano where he had once taught children to play, and he made a decision that would change everything. "Gather everyone," he told Park Sol. "Every musician, every instrument, every piece of music we have left. We are going to play a concert that the galaxy will never forget." Outside, alien construction crews worked day and night to build the massive sonic arrays that would silence Earth forever. But in hidden rooms and secret basements, human musicians prepared for the performance of their lives. They did not know if their music would be enough to save the world, but they were going to try because that was what humans did. When faced with impossible odds, they did not give up. They sang louder. The message spread through the resistance like wildfire. 7 days until the aliens destroyed Earth's atmosphere. 7 days to mount their final attack. Kim Dae stood in the abandoned Seoul concert hall, surrounded by instruments salvaged from ruins and musicians who had risked everything to be there. The building was damaged but still standing, its acoustics perfect for what they planned to do. "This is it," he told the assembled crowd. "Our last chance to fight back." Park Sol had been working without sleep, coordinating with resistance cells around the world. From the ruins of New York to the hidden caves of the Amazon, from the bombed concert halls of Vienna to the secret temples of Tibet, musicians were preparing for the largest coordinated performance in human history. "We have contacts in 43 cities," she reported. "Over 10,000 musicians ready to play. But we need something special, something that will reach every Dominion ship in space." That something was Li Wu's masterpiece, a composition he had been working on for months. He called it the Human Symphony, and it was unlike anything ever created before. "I have studied every form of human music," he explained to the group. "Classical, folk, jazz, rock, traditional songs from every culture on Earth. This symphony combines them all into one piece, designed to overwhelm alien minds completely." The symphony was written in 7 movements, each targeting a different type of Dominion personnel. The first movement would disable their soldiers, the second would confuse their scientists, the third would terrify their commanders. By the 7th movement, no alien within hearing range would be capable of rational thought. But they needed more than just Earth-based musicians. They needed to reach the Dominion fleet in orbit. That was where Dr. Velkani came in. She had been secretly helping the resistance for weeks, using her access to Dominion systems to provide intelligence and supplies. But now she was about to commit the ultimate act of treason against her own species. "I can give you access to our communication networks," she told Kim Dae through an encrypted channel. "Every ship, every base, every Dominion installation in this system. Your music can reach them all." The plan was ambitious beyond imagination. At exactly noon, Greenwich Mean Time, musicians around the world would begin playing the Human Symphony. The performance would be broadcast through hijacked Dominion communication systems, reaching every alien in the solar system simultaneously. Choi Na had been training teams of drummers, teaching them the complex rhythms that formed the symphony's foundation. These were not just beats. They were mathematical weapons, designed to exploit the rigid thought patterns of Dominion minds. "Remember," she told her drummers as they practiced in secret locations around the city, "the rhythm must be perfect. One mistake and the whole pattern fails." Song Min had similar responsibilities with the string sections. She had been working with violinists, cellists, and traditional Korean string players, creating harmonies that would slice through alien mental defenses like musical swords. The preparations were not without casualties. 3 musicians were captured during a practice session, tortured by aliens trying to understand what the humans were planning. But they revealed nothing, and their sacrifice only strengthened the resolve of the others. Meanwhile, the aliens were building their own weapons. The sonic nullification arrays rose like metal mountains around human cities, designed to create fields of absolute silence. But more terrifying were the atmospheric purge weapons, massive orbital platforms that could strip away Earth's air and leave the planet a lifeless rock. Admiral Zexmorth was confident in his strategy. "Let them play their primitive noise," he told his staff. "In 6 days there will be no atmosphere left to carry sound. The human problem will be solved permanently. But Dr. Velkani was working against him, sabotaging systems and creating vulnerabilities that the humans could exploit. Her actions had not gone unnoticed. "Doctor," Commander Vextar said, appearing at her laboratory door with armed guards, "you will come with us for questioning." She knew she had been discovered. As the guards approached, she sent one final message to the resistance. "I am compromised. You must begin early. Begin now." The message reached Kim Dae just as he was making final preparations for the performance. They had planned to wait until all the musicians were in position, but they were out of time. "Change of plans," he announced to his orchestra. "We play now." Park Saul looked at her watch. It was 3:47 p.m. in Seoul, which meant it was only 7:47 a.m. in London and just past midnight in Los Angeles. Musicians around the world would not be ready. "We cannot wait for the others," Kim Dae said. "If we do not start now, we may never get another chance." The Seoul musicians took their positions. Traditional Korean instruments sat alongside Western orchestral pieces, electric guitars next to ancient flutes, modern drums beside thousand-year-old bells. It was a mixture that should have sounded terrible, but under Park Saul's expert direction, it formed something beautiful and powerful. Lee Woo raised his baton, and the human symphony began. The first movement started softly, with traditional Korean melodies played on the gaegeum. The sound was gentle and sad, speaking of loss and longing. But embedded in those ancient notes were mathematical patterns that began to work on alien minds immediately. In orbit above Earth, Dominion ships began reporting problems. Navigation systems flickered, communication arrays started producing strange signals, and crew members complained of unusual mental disturbances. The second movement added Western classical instruments, violins and cellos joining the traditional Korean strings. The harmonies grew more complex and the effect on the aliens intensified. On the main Dominion command ship, Admiral Zexmorth tried to maintain control as his bridge crew began to show signs of confusion. "Activate all dampening systems," he ordered. "Block those transmissions." But the human symphony had been designed to overcome their technology. Each movement used different frequencies, different approaches, different ways of bypassing their defenses. The third movement brought in the drums, not just Choi Na's traditional percussion, but every form of rhythm from around the world. African polyrhythms mixed with Latin beats, Korean samulnori blended with European marches, creating a wall of sound that struck the aliens like a physical force. Dominion soldiers on the surface began fleeing their posts. Some collapsed entirely, overwhelmed by the complexity of human emotion expressed through music. Others simply stood motionless, their logical minds unable to process what they were hearing. By the fourth movement, the symphony had spread beyond Seoul. Musicians in other cities had heard the broadcast and begun playing along, adding their voices to the global chorus. London orchestras joined in, then New York jazz ensembles, then traditional musicians from every continent on Earth. The effect was cumulative and devastating. Dominion ships began falling from the sky as their crews became incapacitated. Ground. Installations went silent as their personnel abandoned their posts or collapsed at their stations. But Admiral Zexmorth still had one card to play. Even as his own crew staggered around the bridge, unable to perform their duties, he activated the atmospheric purge weapons manually. "If we cannot control this planet," he said, his voice distorted by the musical chaos affecting his mind, "we will destroy it." The weapons began to charge, preparing to strip away Earth's atmosphere in one final act of spite. In the Seoul Concert Hall, Kim Dae saw the energy readings on Dr. Velkani's hijacked instruments. The purge weapons would fire in minutes. "We need the final movements now," he shouted to his orchestra. "Everything we have, everything we are, put it into the music." The symphony entered its climactic phase. All around the world, human voices joined the instruments. Millions of people inspired by the broadcast began to sing along. They sang in every language, every style, every tradition their species had ever created. The sound was unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. a chorus of 7 billion, voices raised in defiance against those who would silence them forever. And in space, something unprecedented happened. The music did not just disable the aliens, it began to change them. The moment had arrived. In the ruins of the Seoul Concert Hall, Kim Dae raised his hands as the human symphony entered its final movements. Around the world, millions of voices joined together in humanity's last song. Above them in space, the Dominion's atmospheric purge weapons powered up for their deadly strike. Admiral Zexmorth struggled to maintain control of his ship as the human symphony flooded every communication channel, every speaker, every piece of technology capable of producing sound. "Fire the weapons," he ordered, but his crew could barely stand. The music was overwhelming their enhanced minds, breaking through centuries of genetic conditioning that had bred emotion out of their species. On Earth, Park Seoul conducted the largest orchestra in human history. Musicians in hidden bunkers, ruined, concert halls and secret caves played as if their lives depended on it, because they did. The symphony swelled beyond anything ever heard before, a combination of every musical tradition humanity had ever created. The fifth movement began, with children's voices, recordings of young humans singing lullabies, nursery rhymes, and simple songs their parents had taught them. To the aliens, these innocent voices were the most terrifying sounds imaginable. Their logical minds could not understand why creatures would create sounds that served no practical purpose except to make other creatures happy. On the Dominion command ship, Subcommander Kailos dropped his weapon and stared at nothing, his metal face wet with tears he did not understand. For the first time in his life, he was feeling something beyond cold logic. "What is happening to me?" he whispered. Dr. Velkani, freed from her prison cell by guards who had abandoned their posts, made her way to the command center. She found Admiral Zexmorth hunched over his controls, fighting against the emotions the music was awakening in him. "Stop this," she said quietly. "Please, let them live." "They are primitives," the Admiral snarled, though his voice shook with uncertainty. "They must be controlled." "No," Dr. Velkani replied. "We are the primitives. Listen to their music. Really listen. They have created beauty. We have created only efficiency." The sixth movement exploded across the galaxy with the full power of human creativity unleashed. Rock guitars screamed alongside classical violins. Jazz trumpets sang with traditional flutes. Electronic synthesizers danced with ancient drums. Lee Wu had designed this movement to be pure chaos, but organized chaos. The kind of beautiful disorder that only humans could create. Every note seemed random, yet somehow they all fit together into something larger than their individual parts. The effect on the Dominion fleet was complete and total breakdown. Ships drifted powerless as their crews sat in stunned wonder, experiencing emotions they had no names for. Some aliens laughed for the first time in their lives. Others cried. Many simply listened in amazement as their rigid worldview crumbled around them. But the atmospheric purge weapons were still charging. The Admiral, protected by the most advanced mental conditioning his species could devise, fought against the music's influence and reached for the firing controls. "I will not let them contaminate the galaxy with their chaos," he declared. That was when the seventh and final movement began. It started with a single human voice, Kim Dae himself, standing in the center of the Seoul Concert Hall, singing without any instrument to accompany him. His voice was not perfect or trained, but it carried something no alien technology could replicate, the pure expression of human hope. He sang an old Korean folk song his grandmother had taught him, about a bird that flew through the darkness to find the dawn. Other voices joined him, first Park Seoul, then Choi Na, then Song Min, then Lee Woo. Soon every human on Earth who could draw breath was singing along. The song spread beyond Earth, carried by Dominion communication systems, to every planet in their empire. Humans in prison camps, humans in hiding, humans who had thought they would never hear music again. All of them lifted their voices and sang. But they were not alone. On the Dominion command ship, Dr. Velkani opened her mouth and added her voice to the chorus. Her alien vocal cords were not designed for human music, but she sang anyway, creating sounds that were strange but beautiful. Other aliens joined her. First the younger soldiers, whose minds were more flexible, then the scientists, who began to understand the mathematical beauty hidden in human music. Even some commanders abandoned their post to participate in this unprecedented moment of interspecies cooperation. Admiral Zexmorth found his hand frozen above the firing controls. The song surrounded him, penetrated his defenses, and reached something deep in his mind that his people had thought was extinct. He was feeling wonder, joy, and something else. Compassion for the small planet below. I cannot do it, he said, his voice barely a whisper. How can I destroy something so beautiful? The atmospheric purge weapons powered down. All across the Dominion fleet, ships stopped their attack and simply listened to the extraordinary music rising from Earth. But the symphony was not finished. The final movement continued, growing stronger with every voice that joined it. The song was no longer just about survival. It was about transformation, about the possibility that two very different species could find common ground in shared appreciation for beauty. On Earth, Kim Day stepped outside the ruined concert hall and looked up at the sky. Dominion ships were landing peacefully in cities around the world. Alien soldiers emerged with their weapons lowered, their faces showing curiosity instead of conquest. In space, Admiral Zexmorth opened a communication channel to the planet below. When he spoke, his voice carried emotions that would have been impossible for a Dominion citizen just hours before. Humans of Earth, he said, the words carried to every radio, every speaker, every device capable of receiving sound. We came to your world believing we were superior. We thought efficiency and logic were the highest achievements possible. You have shown us we were wrong. He paused, struggling to find words in a language that had no terms for what he was feeling. Your music has awakened something in us that we thought was lost forever. We wish to learn from you. We wish to understand how you create such beauty from chaos, how you find meaning in what we called meaningless. The symphony played on, but its tone was changing. What had begun as a weapon of desperation had become something else entirely. A bridge between worlds, a demonstration that art could accomplish what violence never could. In the months that followed, everything changed. Park Saul became the director of the first interspecies conservatory of music, teaching both humans and reformed Dominion citizens. Her concerts now included alien musicians learning to play human instruments with varying degrees of success. Kim Day found himself appointed as Earth's first Minister of Cultural Exchange, organizing programs that brought human artists to alien worlds and alien students to Earth. He often thought about that first night in the cave when they had discovered that music could be a weapon, how he knew it could be something much more powerful, a tool for peace. Li Wu's Human Symphony became the most performed piece of music in galactic history, translated into hundreds of alien musical systems. His newest compositions blended human creativity with alien mathematical precision, creating entirely new forms of art that neither species could have imagined alone. Choi Na established schools of traditional percussion on dozens of worlds, teaching alien students the complex rhythms that had once driven their soldiers to panic. Her students learned that chaos and order could coexist, that structure and freedom were not opposites but partners in the dance of creation. Songmin toured the galaxy with mixed orchestras, performing concerts that proved harmony was possible between the most different beings. Her violin still bore the scratches from the days when she had hidden in ruins, but now it sang in concert halls, built by humans and aliens working together. Dr. Velkani published research papers on the neurological effects of music, helping both species understand how art could heal minds damaged by too much logic or too much chaos. She often said that her greatest scientific discovery was learning how to cry. Admiral Zexmorth resigned from the military and became a student, spending his days learning to play the piano with fingers that were never designed for such delicate work. He was not very good at it, but he practiced with the dedication he had once reserved for conquest. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still misunderstandings, still those who preferred the old ways of force and domination. But something fundamental had changed. The idea that art was worthless, that emotion was weakness, that efficiency was the only measure of worth. These beliefs had been shattered by a symphony played in the ruins of Earth. And in a small cafe, in rebuilt Seoul, Kim Dae sat at an old piano and played simple melodies for an audience of humans and aliens who had learned to appreciate beauty together. The music was not complex or mathematically perfect, but it was alive with the joy of creation. Outside, the sun set over a city where two species worked side by side, building something new. The war was over. The music had won. And in concert, halls across the galaxy, beings who had once been enemies now sang together in harmony. The Empire had ridiculed human art and learned to fight using human music. But in the end, they had discovered something more valuable than conquest. They had learned to create beauty together